Hello friends, very good morning. Welcome to 16th July daily Hindu news analysis in English from LTX classes. Friends, in this particular video, we will discuss the important articles that were published in the today's newspaper. So apart from the article discussion, we will also see the required background that is required for that particular article from the both prelims and as well as mains perspective. Okay, so let me clarify two important things. Friends, I am taking from these articles from the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper, so that you can also take these particular articles from there. And as well as, let us start first of all the agenda. That means this agenda says that what articles we will discuss in this particular video. If you see the first and foremost article, Supreme Court to hear the petitions against passing the laws as money bills. This is an important article from the GS paper to polity perspective. We have to read this article. Let us go to the next one. ICAR, which means Indian Council of Agricultural Research, to release 323 new varieties of 56 crops today. So this we have to read under GS paper to government policies and as well as interventions. Then the next article. 2 stealth frigates being built in Russia set to be delivered soon. So this we have to cover under GS paper 3 security. Then the fourth important article, trade deficit widens 9.4% from a year ago as imports outpace the exports. This is an article that we have to prepare from the GS paper 3 Indian economy, specifically balance of payments. Then the next article, WPI inflation soars to 16-month high. This also we have to cover under GS paper 3 Indian economy. Then the next article, need stronger aviation ecosystem to brace for the fleet doubling in 5 to 6 years. So this we have to read under GS paper 3 aviation, like infrastructure related to railways, aviation. With respect to aviation, we have to discuss this article. And then the last article, ISRO has a problem, many rockets but few satellites to launch. This we have to cover under GS paper 3 space. Yes friends, these are the series of articles that we have to cover today in this particular video from the 16th July Hindu news analysis. So now, without any wasting the time, let us start with the detailed explanation of the articles. Let us start with the first one. The first one article talks about Supreme Court to hear the petitions against passing the laws as money bills. So recently this was it was published in the today's newspaper. Before directly jumping on to this particular article, let us see some important points. Like the first and foremost point that you have to understand is the difference between a bill and as well as an act. What is a bill and as well as what is an act? First of all, you have to understand. In our country, if you see, there are 3 organs of the government. Like for example, we have executive, and then we have the legislature, and then we have the judiciary. Correct, right? Executive, legislature, and as well as judiciary. So what was the duty of the legislature? The duty of the legislature is to enact the laws that are required for our country. To enact the laws which are required for our country. What was the duty of the executive? So the laws which are implemented, which are executed, which are enacted by the legislature will be implemented by the executive. True, right? Implemented by the executive. And what about the judiciary's role? Judiciary's role is to adjudicate the laws. Whenever there is any dispute, whenever there is any conflict of that particular law with respect to the constitution, so then the judiciary will come into picture and it will try to restore the rights of the people by striking off that particular law. Isn't it right? So let me talk and say again. So we have 3 organs of the government. Those 3 organs are executive, legislature, and as well as judiciary. So the role of legislature is to enact the laws which are required for our country. Executive to implement those laws which are enacted by the legislature. Judiciary to adjudicate the laws. That means judiciary will ensure that the laws which are passed by the legislature are in conformity with the constitution. So therefore, if it violates the constitution, so then immediately judiciary will come into picture and strike off that particular law. So these are the 3 organs of the government. Now today our focus is on legislature. Legislature at the central level, if you say talk about legislature at the central level, legislature at the central level is referred to as parliament. So parliament. So the parliament consists of two important bodies, right? Two important parts, right? First one is Lok Sabha, second one is Rajya Sabha. So this was the basic bare minimum points, right? Lok Sabha and as well as Rajya Sabha. Legislature has at the central level we call it as parliament, and parliament at the this thing is called as the Lok Sabha. One of the houses is Lok Sabha and the other is house is Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha, house of people. Lok Sabha is also known as house of people, and then Rajya Sabha is known as council of states. These terms are very important, friends. That is house of people and the council of states. Yes, Lok Sabha is otherwise known as House of People. Rajya Sabha is otherwise known as Council of States. Okay, let us not dig deep to the polity completely here. So we will restrict ourselves to now come back to what is a bill. So bill is basically a proposal. A bill is a proposal. Let us say that might be that might be for a new law, or that might be for an amendment to the existing law. So a bill is generally considered as a proposal which will be introduced by the member of the parliament. Either can be introduced in Lok Sabha or it can be introduced in Rajya Sabha. For example, if they assume that this proposal is this is what is a bill, then what is an act? Act means, so if that proposal has to pass in first of all one house. For example, assume that it is introduced in Lok Sabha. There was one such bill, a proposal is there which was initiated in the Lok Sabha, and now if it is passed in the Lok Sabha, it has to move to the Rajya Sabha, and in Rajya Sabha also it have to be passed by the members of Rajya Sabha. Once both these houses pass that particular bill, it will now move to the president. So the president have to give his assent to this particular bill. After the assent of the president, it will be published in the official gazette, and from there it will become an act. Okay, after the president's assent, this bill will become an act. Bill and as well as an act is the difference that you have to understand. Once you are thorough with the bill and as well as an act, so there are four different types of bills. There are four different types of bills. The first one is ordinary bills. Second one is money bills. Ordinary bills, and then second one is money bills. The third one is financial bills. Financial bills. And finally the fourth one is constitutional amendment bills. Constitution amendment bills. So now you understood what is a bill. A bill is basically a proposal. It might be to introduce a new law, or it might be an amendment to the existing law. And then you also understood that there are four different types of bills. What are those four types? Ordinary bill, money bill, financial bill, and as well as the constitutional amendment bill. Today we will confine our discussion only to that of the money bills. So because the article is associated with money bills, let us concentrate only on money bills. So I have written some important points for you so that you can use them you can read them after for your reference. You can read them later on. Okay, so now what is a money bill? That's the first question that you have to ask. So a money bill is basically that bill. To understand money bill, you need to be aware of one important article called as article number 110 of the Constitution. Because article number 110 of the Constitution talks about money bills. So what it says? Article number 110 of the Constitution deals with the money bills. It states that a bill is deemed to be a money bill if it contains only the provisions dealing with all or any of the provisions matters mentioned in article number 110 of the Constitution. So now what it says, the definition of a money bill is, a bill can be regarded as a money bill if that particular bill contains any or all of the matters which are mentioned in article number 110 of the Constitution, then you can term that particular bill as a money bill. Once again, a bill can be defined as a money bill if it contains any or all. It can be either one or it can be all of the matters which are mentioned in the article number 110 of the Constitution, then you can term that particular bill as a money bill. Yes, now the second question comes. What are the matters which are mentioned under article number 110 of the Constitution? So the matters are, like example, can be associated with the imposition, abolition, remission or regulation of any tax. For example, imposing a tax, a new tax, or abolishing the existing tax, or regulating a tax. In that context, so then this provision will be, if you introduce a specific bill in order to do these activities, then you can term that particular bill as a money bill. And similarly, the one more important is appropriation of money from the Consolidated Fund of India. There was one important fund called as Consolidated Fund of India. All the salaries, allowances, they will all be charged on the Consolidated Fund of India only. Okay, it is a government's bank account where all the funds of the government of India will be under the Consolidated Fund of India. So now if you want to take that money from the Consolidated Fund of India, if you want to appropriate, in order to do that appropriation, you will be introducing a bill, and that particular bill can also be termed as money bill. So now you come to the conclusion that what is a money bill? Article number 110 of the Constitution has defined what is a money bill. What it defined? It defined that it defined as any bill which deals with the any or all of the matters which are mentioned in article number 110 of the Constitution can be considered as a money bill. So what are the matters which are mentioned under article number 110? Like for example, if it is something related to appropriation of the money from the Consolidated Fund of India, or it can be something related to imposing a new tax or abolishing an existing tax or regulating any particular tax, so then all these matters will be associated with that of the money bill. This is the next important point you have to understand. Now the question comes, who declares a particular bill to be a money bill? So now you have understood what is a money bill. So the immediate question that you have to pose to is, who declares a particular bill to be as a money bill? So that particular power to certify, to declare a particular bill as a money bill was given to the Speaker of Lok Sabha. Very important, friends. So the Speaker decides, it is the Speaker of Lok Sabha who decides whether a particular bill is a money bill or not. So that power has been given to that of the Speaker of Lok Sabha. And the third important is, so the next are some of the important points associated with that of the money bill. Now you understood that in Parliament we have Lok Sabha and as well as Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha is also known as House of People and Rajya Sabha is also known as Council of States. Now here you should understand that this money bill, whatever we are talking about it, which is under article number 110 of the Constitution, can be introduced only in Lok Sabha. Please be very clear. It can be only be introduced in the House of People, which is other name of Lok Sabha. It should not be introduced in the Council of States, that is Rajya Sabha. It can be introduced only in the Lok Sabha and it should not be introduced at any cost in Rajya Sabha, that is a Council of States. That is the next important point you have to understand. Then the next important point is, before introducing a bill in the House of People, the President has to recommend that particular bill. So the President's recommendation is needed in order to introduce a bill, money bill, in the House of People. So the important term, so the President has to recommend, President's recommendation is needed in order to introduce that particular bill in the House of People. And the next important is, with respect to money bill, Rajya Sabha has very limited role. You are aware, right? Two houses are there, Lok Sabha and as well as Rajya Sabha. Now, with respect to Rajya Sabha has a very limited role with respect to that of the money bill. How? What was the role? If you, before talking about the limited role of Rajya Sabha with respect to money bill, you should understand that with respect to ordinary bill, if it is a normal ordinary bill, then what will happen is that ordinary bill can be introduced in any of the houses. That means it can be introduced either in Lok Sabha or it can be introduced in Rajya Sabha. That was the first and foremost point. Second point, let us assume that if it is introduced in Lok Sabha and it was passed in Lok Sabha and now it went to Rajya Sabha. Okay, now it went to Rajya Sabha. So Rajya Sabha has to pass this bill. So now Rajya Sabha has same powers as if like Lok Sabha with respect to ordinary bills. If the Rajya Sabha rejects a bill, it can reject it. Okay, if the Rajya Sabha has rejected that particular bill and if there is any disagreement, then a joint session will be conducted between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So let me tell you again, with respect to ordinary bill I am talking about. In the case of ordinary bill, so since it is ordinary bill, it can be introduced either in Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha. Isn't it right? If it is introduced in Lok Sabha, it will be passed in the Lok Sabha and then it will be moved to that of the Rajya Sabha, because with respect to ordinary bills or any bill for that matter, both the houses have to pass that particular bill. Then only it will become an act later of the president's assent. So now let us assume that there is one such ordinary bill which is passed in Lok Sabha and now it moved to the Rajya Sabha. So now Rajya Sabha has same powers as if like Lok Sabha. If at all it wants to reject that particular bill, it can reject that particular bill. And if there is any disagreement between Lok Sabha and as well as Rajya Sabha, in order to resolve this deadlock, a joint session will be conducted. In order to resolve this particular deadlock, a joint session will be conducted between both the houses. All this procedure will happen with respect to ordinary bills. But coming to the money bill, what will happen is, let me show you again with respect to money bill, how it happens is, money bill cannot be amended by Rajya Sabha or it cannot be even rejected by Rajya Sabha. So with respect to Lok Sabha, it can amend and reject. But with respect to money bill, it cannot be amended and it cannot be even rejected by the Rajya Sabha. It can only provide the recommendations. So the money bill, with respect to money bill, Rajya Sabha can provide only the recommendations. It can give the only suggestions to Lok Sabha. So that's it. That means the role of Rajya Sabha with respect to money bill is very, very, very limited. And even these recommendations are also not binding on Lok Sabha. So that means Lok Sabha need not follow even these recommendations also, which were given by that of the Rajya Sabha. Is another important point you have to consider. And since the Rajya Sabha's role is completely recommendatory in nature, therefore there is no provision of even joint sitting with respect to that of the money bill. There is no provision for a joint sitting with respect to that of the money bill. So these are some of the important points that you are expected to know with respect to money bill, because money bill is a very important topic from the UPSC both prelims and as well as mains perspective, particularly for the prelims. So in this context, you need to be very thorough with all these specific points. Let me revise once again. A money bill is basically defined under article number 110 of the Constitution. So a bill can be termed as a money bill if it contains any or all of the provisions which are mentioned in article number 110 of the Constitution. Example for the money bill can be, it can be associated with any taxation related matter. It can be associated with the appropriating the funds from the consolidated fund of India. And then second point is, who has the power to decide, to certify that this particular bill is a money bill? Yes, it is the Speaker of Lok Sabha. So the Speaker of Lok Sabha decides whether a particular bill is a money bill or not. So then can it be introduced in Rajya Sabha? No, it cannot be introduced in Rajya Sabha. It can only be introduced in Lok Sabha, that is House of People only. Then the next important point, so President's recommendation is mandatory before introducing this particular bill. President's recommendation is needed in order to introduce this particular money bill, that too in Lok Sabha. And can the Rajya Sabha can amend the money bill? No, it cannot amend. Can it reject it? No, it cannot reject it. What it can only do? It can only provide the recommendations. Are these recommendations binding on Lok Sabha? No, they are not binding. So these are the important points. So it cannot be amended, it cannot be rejected by Rajya Sabha, or it can only provide the recommendations, and these recommendations are also not binding upon the Lok Sabha. And is there any provision for joint sitting? Not at all. There is no provision for joint sitting with respect to that of the money bill, because Rajya Sabha's role is just recommendatory in nature. Now what this article is all about. So now this article is saying that here, if you understand clearly, who has the power to declare a particular bill as a money bill? So it is Speaker of Lok Sabha. Correct. Speaker of Lok Sabha has the power to declare a particular bill as a money bill. So for example, so the government will be generally there in the Lok Sabha, and if at all government want to introduce a particular bill, okay, and now if it is facing some competition in Rajya Sabha, it is facing some opposition in Rajya Sabha, so then the government will use a weapon. So will use a, not even, we should not say it as a weapon, we should say it's basically that the government will misuse. So in such a way that how it will be doing it, so in order to bypass the Rajya Sabha, if for example if that particular bill is declared as a money bill, so then slowly we can bypass the Rajya Sabha, because with respect to if it is declared as a money bill, so then Rajya Sabha will not have any role. If Rajya Sabha doesn't have any role, it can only tell the recommendations only, and even those recommendations are also not binding on the Lok Sabha. So now what Lok Sabha can do? Directly it can pass that particular bill and send it to Rajya Sabha and get it back immediately and send it to President Assent and implement it. So this is how the government's intentions can be fulfilled. Is this the right path? Not at all. Correct, right? So but there are allegations against the government that so it is using this controversial route of using this money bill route. That means here it will, now the ordinary bill will be declared as a money bill by the speaker, and from there it will bypass the Rajya Sabha and it will completely sideline the Rajya Sabha and will be passed only in Lok Sabha and get the presidential assent. So now the Supreme Court is set to hear the petitions against passing the laws as a money bills. So their petition has been filed in the Supreme Court regarding this particular controversial route that was adopted by the government in order to pass the controversial laws by declaring them as money bills. Here they have given some examples also, like see, some of the legislations which are passed as money bills in the parliament include Amendment to the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, the Finance Act of 2017, Aadhaar Act of 2016. So all these bills they have been declared as money bills, even though they are ordinary bills. So they are declared as the money bills, and in order to avoid the Rajya Sabha's route, so they have declared them as money bill, and then through only Lok Sabha only these particular bills have been passed. So this is the controversy is all about, and these are the important points. Money bill is important from the both prelims and as well as mains perspective, so you are expected to know it. And in the, if you don't believe my words, let me show you a question that was asked from UPSC 2024. 1 month back in UPSC prelims, this particular question was asked with respect to money bills. Try to look into it. Which of the following statements are correct with respect to that of the money bill in the parliament? Article number 109 mentions about special procedures in respect of money bills. A money bill shall not be introduced in the Council of States. The Rajya Sabha can either approve the bill or suggest the changes but cannot reject it. Amendments to a money bill suggested by Rajya Sabha have to be accepted by the Lok Sabha. Now let us see these points. So first point, maybe let us assume that you are not aware of this particular article. Okay, let's keep that point aside. See the second point. A money bill shall not be introduced in the Council of States. I hope now you are aware that money bill is basically that bill which should be introduced only in the House of People, that is Lok Sabha, House of People, and it should not be introduced. It should not be introduced in the Council of States. You are clear with that point, right? It should not be introduced in the Council of States. That is what they are saying. A money bill shall not be introduced in the Council of States. Absolutely correct statement. Okay, because it will not be introduced in the Council of States. Next point. The Rajya Sabha can either approve the bill, that means accept the bill, or suggest the changes, that means recommendations, but cannot reject it. Absolutely true. We know that Rajya Sabha can either have the option of accepting the bill, or you can make some suggestions, or amendments, propose some amendments, but you cannot reject that particular bill. Absolutely correct statement. Second one is also. See the third one is also. See the fourth one. Amendment to a money bill suggested by Rajya Sabha have to be accepted by Lok Sabha. So that means now here they are saying that whatever the amendments that are proposed by Rajya Sabha should have to be compulsorily accepted by Lok Sabha. Is that true? Are they binding on Lok Sabha? No, right? Because our understanding, we are very clear that whatever the recommendations which are proposed by Rajya Sabha, they are not binding on the Lok Sabha. So that was the fourth point. Amendments to a money bill suggested by Rajya Sabha have to be accepted by the Lok Sabha is wrong statement. So that means the fourth one is wrong, means this statement is wrong statement. And you know that the third statement is correct, means this statement is also wrong statement. Now you are left with the 2 and 3 only, 1, 2, 3 only. So even the first statement, that is article number 109, mentions a special procedure with respect to money bills. Even that is also correct statement. And C, 1, 2, 3 only is the answer. Yes friends, this is how, this is the UPSC 2024 preliminary examination question. Okay. So 1 month back this question was asked in the UPSC 2024. See how important it is and how they are asking the questions. So they are asking only bare minimum points only, right? You know that it will not be introduced in Council of States. You know that Rajya Sabha can either approve the bill or suggest the changes, but it cannot reject it. And you already know that amendments to a bill which are suggested by Rajya Sabha are not obligatory. So they are not binding on the Lok Sabha. Yes. Clear, right? This is the first important article that you need to be aware of. Let us go to the next article. ICAR to release 323 new varieties of the 56 crops today. Recently, the 96th Foundation Day of ICAR, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, took place, and as well as today it is the 96th Foundation Day, and as part of it, ICAR has recently announced a new program that is known as One Scientist, One Product program. One Scientist, One Product program. I have written here clearly for you. So this ICAR, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, has came up with a new program called as One Scientist, One Product program. See the first point. The Indian Council of Agricultural Research, ICAR, will launch a program called as One Scientist, One Product program to improve the research in the field of agriculture and animal husbandry. So in order to increase the research activities, so in order to promote the research and as well as development in the agricultural and as well as animal husbandry sector, so and thereby increasing the productivity and finally increasing the doubling the farmers income with an objective to do that. So the Indian Council of Agricultural Research has introduced a new program called as One Scientist, One Product program. So they will be asking you, consider the following statements about One Scientist, One Product program. Point number 1, they will give the statement number 1, they will give like it is associated with so and so, it is introduced by, they'll be asking you, it is introduced by, it is associated with, so they'll give you multiple statements. Here you need to be very clear that this is a program that was introduced by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. See the second program, this will be inaugurated by the Union Agriculture Minister. And the third point is, under this program, what is the main objective of this program? So the main program, how it functions is, it is basically Indian Council of Agricultural Research will give a target to all the about 5,500 scientists who are under the institute to come up with a product, technology, model, concept or a publication every year. So that means every scientist have to come up with a new innovative product, or they have to come up with a new technology or a model concept or a publication every year. This was the target that was given to all the scientist community, so who are working under this particular ICAR, Indian Council of Agricultural Research. And what was that program name is called as One Scientist, One Product program. That is One Scientist, One Product program. So you are expected to know some important points about Indian Council of Agricultural Research also. The first and foremost point is that it was established in the year 1929 as a registered society under the Societies Registration Act 1860. This particular Indian Council of Agricultural Research, so they will give you a statement as if like it is a statutory body. So you should understand that it is not a statutory body of the government of India. It is basically a registered society which is registered under Societies Registration Act 1860. and it is an autonomous organization under the DARE, which means Department of Agricultural Research and as well as Education, which comes under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. And this particular body is headquartered in New Delhi. So about there are how many institutes are there? There are about 102 ICAR institutes are there in our country, with 71 agricultural universities. With all of this huge network, it is one of the largest national agricultural systems in the world. Okay, so here basically the spread, the network of the ICAR they are talking about. And finally the last point is, it is an apex body, so that means the highest, so supreme body for coordinating, guiding and managing the research and education in the agricultural sector, which includes horticulture, fisheries and the sciences and the animal sciences in our country. And recently, why it was in the news? Because ICAR recently celebrated its 96th Foundation Day on the 16th July 2024. So in the 16th July 2024, it recently celebrated the 96th Foundation Day. So therefore, you are expected to know about what is ICAR and what are its functions. So directly in the mains, you can expect a question like, what are the functions of the important contributions of the Indian Council of Agricultural Research in promoting the or in doubling the farmers income? So that directly in an application oriented way they can ask a question. And similarly in the prelims also, consider the following statements about ICAR. The first statement they'll give is, it is a statutory body registered under the through a ICAR Act, Government of India. They'll be giving you absolutely false. So you should understand that Indian Council of Agricultural Research is actually a registered society which is registered in the year 1929 under Societies Registration Act. That was the first statement. And the second important statement, it is headquartered in the New Delhi, is the second important point that you need to know about. And as well as it comes under which ministry? Since it is related to agriculture, it comes under the Ministry of Agriculture only, but specifically to the Department of DARE, which means Department of Agricultural Research and as well as Education. Yes, so these are the important points which are associated with that of the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. And as well as, so the two current affairs that we have talked about are, first important one we talked about is money bill, we have seen with respect to that article. And the second article we talked about is one scientist one product program, which was launched by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. And then we also talked about this Indian Council of Agricultural Research. Now let us go to the third important article, which is important from the UPSC perspective but published in the Hindu newspaper. 2 stealth frigates being built in Russia set to be delivered soon. This was the third article which came up. Stealth means secret, frigate means ship. Stealth means secret, frigate means a ship. So now actually in the year 2016 there was an agreement between India and as well as Russia for the production of 4 stealth frigates which are required for our country. And as part of this agreement, out of these 4, 2 frigates will be directly imported from Russia. That means they will be manufactured in Russia, and now we will directly import those 2 frigates, and the other 2 will be manufactured in our country itself with the Russian assistance. So that means with the assistance from the Russia, so like with respect to the transfer of technology and as well as raw materials, required raw materials and all the other things required. So we will manufacture the 2 frigates, stealth frigates in our country, and 2 will be imported. So now the news is related to the first 2, that means which are getting imported from Russia. Now it is saying that 2 stealth frigates which are built in Russia, so that means they are talking about the first 2, so set to be delivered soon. So that means these 2 particular frigates, stealth frigates which were built in Russia, are going to be delivered soon to the Indian Navy. So you are expected to know these particular 2 important ships which are in the news. So I have written some points, let us see. In October 2016, India and Russia have signed an intergovernmental agreement for 4 stealth frigates, which means ships. 2 should be directly imported and 2 should be manufactured by the Goa Shipyard Limited in our country itself. Okay, then next point. The name of the first ship is Tushil. Tushil is the name of the first ship which will be delivered by September 2024 from Russia, and the second one is Tamal, which will be delivered by February 2025. So the two stealth frigates that the article is talking about are, the first one is with the name Tushil, and the second name with the Tamal. Okay, the first one is the Tushil, and as well as the second one is the Tamal. So these are the two stealth frigates. So you can expect a question like Tushil and Tamal are often seen recently in the news. What are they? Like, are they ballistic missiles? Are they ships or frigates basically, or are they nuclear weapons? So the question can be in any format. So you should be you need to be thorough that Tushil and as well as Tamal are actually the stealth frigates which are being built by the Russia. We are importing from the Russia, and the other two which will be built in our country only by the Goa Shipyard Limited. So these are the some of the important points with respect to this article. Up till now we have talked about three important articles. We have seen like money bill petitions with respect to in Supreme Court, and then the second one we talked about Indian Council of Agricultural Research, where we talked about one scientist one product program, and the third important one is the two stealth frigates to be imported from Russia, which is the Tushil and as well as the Tamal. These are the two important frigates which will be into that of the Russia. Okay, then let us go to the next important article. WPI inflation soars to 16-month high. WPI stands for Wholesale Price Index, WPI. So this Wholesale Price Index has soared to 16-month high. So that means the value of this WPI inflation is now at a 16-month high level. Before directly understanding this article, we need to know that basic background, because rather with respect, you can better appreciate this data only when you are thorough with the basics. So let me tell you, I have written some important points with respect to WPI. Let us start reading them. The first one is Wholesale Price Index. WPI stands for Wholesale Price Index. Now what does this Wholesale Price Index talks about? What it measures? It is an index, right? It measures something. What it measures? This Wholesale Price Index will measure the changes in the prices of the goods which are sold and traded in bulk by wholesale businesses to other businesses. So now, instead of looking at the consumer level or at the retail level, this will be looking at the wholesale level. So it will determine how much the price change has happened with respect to that of the base year. So the Wholesale Price Index all measures the changes with respect to the prices of the goods by the wholesale businesses to that of the other businesses. This WPI is published by index is published by Office of Economic Advisor, Ministry of Commerce and as well as Industry. It is published by the Office of the Economic Advisor, which comes under Ministry of Commerce and as well as Industry, and it is generally considered as most widely considered as an inflation indicator. So it is considered as the widely used inflation indicator in our country. And the next important is, so for every index we'll be having a base year, right? For the WPI Wholesale Price Index also, we have a base year of 2011 to 12, which earlier we have the 2004 to 5, but however it was changed to 2011 to 12. So these are all very important specific points with respect to prelims, friends. Very important that you are expected to know. Okay, so now once you are thorough with that the Wholesale Price Index is basically an index which measures the changes in the prices of the goods at the wholesale level. That was the first point. And the second point is that it is published by the Office of Economic Advisor, which comes under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. And the third point, it is most widely used inflation indicator in our country. And then the fourth point we talked about is the base year, which is at the 2011 to 12 is the base year. Now what are the components which are there under WPI index? Like on what were the components which are there? So we have three primary components, friends. The first and foremost is we have something called as primary articles. That was the first one. And the second one we have is fuel and as well as the power. That was the second one. And the third one is manufactured products. That was the third one. We have three important things. That is, the first one is primary articles, and the second one is the fuel and power, and the third one is the manufactured products. If you see the primary articles, there was further subdivision. With the primary articles have a weightage of about 22%. 22.6% is the weightage which is there in the WPI index, with respect to primary articles. Even you can expect a question like highest weightage, lowest weightage, or arrange the following components in according to their weightage in the wholesale price index. Anything can be a potential question, friends. Our concept need to be very clear. So with respect to primary articles, we have the food articles. Like for example, we have the vegetables, potato, onions, fruits, milk, eggs. All these prices, their price changes will be monitored through this particular wholesale price index. If you read this specific article, see this particular point: inflation in the wholesale vegetable prices. So that means they are talking about food articles. Vegetable prices surged to a 10-month high, with onion prices rising year on year by 93.4%. If you see this particular point here, so here we are talking about onion prices, we are talking about potatoes, we are talking about vegetables. So okay, fruits, milk, eggs, meat and fish, all these are the important components under the food articles which comes under the primary articles component. Second one, we have the non-food articles. Non-food articles we have is example is oil seeds, and then minerals, the crude petroleum. These are all comes under the primary articles. And the second thing is fuel and as well as the power. Second important component under the wholesale price index. That is the components are like LPG, petrol and as well as the high speed diesel. Their prices will be monitored under the fuel and power with a weightage of about 13%. See, if you talk about primary articles, they have a weightage of 22.6%, and if you talk about fuel and power, they have the weightage of 13.2%. And finally the third one, which is the manufactured products, which have a weightage of 64.2%. Friends, you should understand that the highest weightage is actually given to the manufactured products with a weightage of about 64.2%. And similarly, the next immediate one is primary articles with a 22% weightage, and the third one is the fuel and as well as the power, which is 13%. So with respect to manufactured products, we have multiple things again, like manufactured food products. For example, it can be vegetable and animal oils and as well as the fats. They comes under the manufactured food products. Then likewise, we also have the manufacturing of the beverages. Then we have the manufacturing of the tobacco products, wearing apparels, pharmaceuticals, etc. So there all the prices of these particular manufactured products will be monitored through the third component, that is manufactured products, whose weightage is about 64%, which is the highest weightage which was given in the wholesale price index. Yes, so now the basic points you are clear. Then you talked about the composition also, like what are all important things that are there. We talked about primary articles, we talked about the fuel and as well as the power, we talked about the manufacturing products, and then we talked about their respective weights also, the highest weightage, the lowest weightage. So these are all important points. Now we have something else called as food index. So this food index it basically consists of mainly food related prices in order to monitor the food related prices. For example, if you see here, these food articles are there under primary articles, and the second one, if you see this one, manufactured food products, this is the second one, manufactured food products. So that means in the primary articles component we have the food articles based one, and also in the manufactured products component we have the manufactured food products component. Now by clubbing these two components, we will arrive at something called as food index. See, the food index will consist of food articles which are from the primary articles group and the food products from the manufactured products group. So by combining these two things, we arrive at something called as food index, exclusively to measure the food related inflation. Okay, so these are the important points with respect to that of the WPI index. So this WPI index and as well as its background and the components, all these are very, very important from the exam point of view, friends. Yes, let us go to the next important one. Trade deficit widened 9.4% from a year ago as imports outpace the exports. So here you should understand. So there are two important things, that is imports. That means we are buying from the another country. When we buy from another country, then they can be termed as imports. Then we have exports. Exports means we are selling to another country. selling to another country. So this everybody knows. Okay, now if these imports are more than that of exports, that means we are buying more than that of we are selling, then it leads to the trade deficit. Similarly, if exports are more than that of the imports, then trade surplus. Currently in our country, now we are facing a scenario of trade deficit where imports are more than that of the exports. That is what they are talking about. Trade deficit got widened by 9.4 percentage from a year ago because imports outpaced the exports. That means import bill is more than that of the export revenue. So because of this, now there is a widening trade deficit is happening. This is important article from the GS paper 3 economy balance of payments. We have to talk about this particular article. So okay, if you see this some important points, if you see the first and foremost point, India's merchandise exports, which means goods, grew for the third straight month in June, rising 2.55% to $2 billion. But the import bill climbed by a faster 5% to $56.2 billion, widening the trade deficit by 9.4% from a year ago, as per the quick trade estimates which are released by the Commerce Ministry on Monday. So now they are saying that the import bill is now more and more than that of the exports, the merchandise exports that we are doing. So okay, monthly data we need not look into, so yearly data we have to look into the yearly data. So because with respect to monthly data, they keep on changing month and month, so in that context UPSC may not ask you the monthly data, but with respect to comparatively on an yearly data, so that means when it compared with that of the last year, like whether imports have been reduced or increased, how was the trade deficit, so this will be the similar questions that you can expect. So this you have to connect to your balance of payments related concept in the Indian economy. This is another important article that was published. Let us go to the next article. Need stronger aviation ecosystem to brace for the fleet doubling in 5 to 6 years. So here you should understand that this was an article published in the business paper. So okay, on the business page this article was published. This is related to that of the aviation sector, particularly promotion of the aviation sector, development of the aviation sector. So now in the upcoming we have a union budget, right? With respect to budget, so now this article here, the authors are trying to make some expectations from the union budget with respect to the aviation sector. So here they are saying that so the airline sector, the aviation industry has increased a manifold way, like with the airlines, important airlines like for example Air India and as well as Indigo and the fleet that they have. But however, they are also talking about some important issues. That is the first and foremost is the pilot shortages. So now because of due to the shortage of the skilled people, so now we cannot sustain this particular rapid expansion. So it need to be now complemented with the skilled people. So that's where the government should look into, that's where the union budget should look into. This is what is the point that the author is making here. So here if you see this particular point, as far as the policy impetus is concerned, given the rate of growth of the aviation industry in our country, skill shortages could arise across the ecosystem, but particularly with respect to technical staff such as pilots and as well as maintenance engineers and technicians. So now the air traffic controllers as well as security and safety personnel are also inadequate relative to their requirements. Therefore, the budget must provide the physical incentives for investment in the skilling, training and as well as education. This is the second important point that they are countering. So they are saying that through budget we have to provide the incentives so the investments will be done in these three sectors like skilling, training and as well as education. Similarly, this particular article is also talking about the reduction of taxes. So this particular article is saying that around 20% of an airline's revenue is going to the tax. In this context, there is a dire need to reduce this particular tax burden so that these airlines can ensure profitability, and it can also invest in the other important key areas like bridging the gap, reducing the skill shortages, etc. So this is the article which it is talking about. I have written some important points here as well. So the budget must provide the physical incentives for investment in skilling, training, and as well as education. And the budget should also look at rationalizing the direct and indirect taxes, which today account for almost 20% of an airline's quarterly revenue, such as through levies on the ATF, something called as aviation turbine fuel. So this article, the people are asking here, the industry experts are basically asking here to reduce the tax burden on these particular airlines and increase the investments in the skilling, education, provide some fiscal incentives, because the aviation sector industry is going at a very rapid expansion, and the fleet that are there with the aircrafts, the possession of aircrafts which are there with respect to the top airlines such as Indigo and as well as Air India are very high, and we should also bridge the skill shortages, like for example particularly with respect to technical staff such as pilots and as well as aircraft maintenance engineers, etc. So this is the article that it is talking about. And now let us go to the last important article for today, which is associated with that of the ISRO has a problem. See, this is published in the science page. This is also very important article from the GS paper 3 space based topic. ISRO has a problem. Many rockets but few satellites to launch. This is a problem now that was raised by the ISRO chairperson as well, Somnath, where he says that we have many launch vehicles but we don't have the satellites to launch. That means there is no demand. So that for these particular launch vehicles, this is what is the problem statement that he is making, and now this article is based on that statement only. So here the author has first pointed out like how many different launch vehicles that we have. Here he is saying that we have different types of launch vehicles, like for example India currently has 4 launch vehicles known as SSLV, we call it as small satellite launch vehicle, and then we have PSLV. So the SSLV, that is small satellite launch vehicle, and as well as PSLV, polar satellite launch vehicle, GSLV, geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle, and the India's heaviest rocket, which is launch vehicle Mark 3, LVM3. So here the author is pointing out that there are 4 launch vehicles that India currently has. And similarly, if at all, if we want to send the satellites worth more than 4 tons of payload, then in that context we even rely upon the other foreign satellite launch vehicles also, like for example SpaceX Falcon. Okay, so here if you see in this particular paragraph, you can read here see, India currently has these launch vehicles, and these rockets can launch the satellites weighing up to 4 tons onto the geosynchronous, and even we rely upon the foreign launch vehicles also, like Ariane 5 and as well as the SpaceX Falcon 9, where a satellite weight is more than 4 tons. Whenever the satellite weight is more than 4 tons, then we even depend on the other countries as well. Similarly, then the next important point he is making is that we have so many satellite launches have happened, and there are so many applications as well from these particular satellite launches. Like for example, if you see this next paragraph, he is saying that at present our country operates a fleet of satellites with applications in communications, remote sensing, positioning, navigation and timing, disaster management, space-based internet, etc. It also needs the launch vehicles for space missions like Chandrayaan 3 and as well as Aditya L1. So then he is making a statement. He is saying that by looking into the first and as well as second paragraphs, that means the number of launch vehicles that we have and as well as the number of applications that we have. So he is now saying that it seems that now we don't have the launch vehicles for applications. That means the applications are more than that of the launch vehicles. So therefore, it seems that there is a gap with respect to launch vehicles and not the demand. So now he started addressing the problems which are associated with it, and at the same time he is also providing some suggestions. The first and foremost he is saying is that there is no demand for these particular launch vehicles. So that means, the people are not engaging in this particular satellite launching. there are no active satellite contracts which are there. So he is saying that there is no demand for these particular launch vehicles. So therefore, what need to be done? The first and foremost thing that need to be done is we have to educate the customers. He is saying that we have to educate the customers. So that means the consumers are the need to be educated. So how come they should be educated? Then he took an example of a space based internet. For example, if you consider the space based internet project, now everybody is talking about it, but with respect to space based internets, we already have the affordable internet facilities, and we even have the mobile based internet facilities also. So the demand for the space based internet is not that high, isn't it, right? So now what we have to do is we have to educate the consumers, we have to educate the customers about the benefits of the space based internet. Like for example, we should not only target the consumers, we should also target some important governmental institutions, important private companies. We have to go to them and say them the benefits of the space based internets. So if we can educate them, then the demand will be generated. So if the demand is generated, then there will be use of the launch vehicles, and if we use these launch vehicles, more and more revenue will come to the government. So therefore, in order to create the demand, the first and foremost thing that we have to do is we have to educate the customers, educate the consumers. So they need to be aware of the situation, they need to be aware of the benefits that will accrue to them. So by giving them the benefits, so then definitely there will be increase in the demand. That is what is the first point he is talking about. See, without the such educated customers, demand at the scale that the ISRO is expecting will not be created. The customers here are not only the consumers of space based internet. For example, in this case, like there can be many companies, there can be government institutions, defense enterprises, etc. So by educating them, so by telling them about the awareness, so by telling them about the need, telling them about the benefits, so then definitely we can create more and more demand for our launch vehicles. And the second thing that he is talking about is demand can also be created from the human space flight. See, now the sooner or later, definitely this space based tourism will definitely improve. So where this human space flights, what they will do in the launch vehicles will transport the people, and as well as they will transport the people, they'll carry the transport human and as well as supplies into that of the orbit. The other area from which the demand is likely to arise is something called as human space flight. This includes human related launch vehicles that carry human and supplies into that of the orbit. So now the author is here optimistic that he is saying that soon the demand for the space based tourism will be definitely high. When the space based tourism grows, so then definitely the demand for the launch vehicles will also grow. This is the second important statement, the argument that he is making. And the third argument he is saying about is the launch vehicle capabilities. He is saying that our existing launch vehicles, that means even if you take the heaviest rocket, that is launch vehicle Mark III, our existing rocket launch vehicles are not that much powerful if you compare it with the China's Long March 5. So China has a most powerful launch vehicle that is known as Long March 5. If you take the Long March 5, our Indian launch vehicles capability is just only less than 1/3 of the China's launch vehicles. So therefore, we have to improve the capabilities. We have to improve the capabilities of these particular launch vehicles is a third important statement he is making. And then he is also talking about that we need to improve the SSLVs, small satellite launch vehicles. For that, we have to carry out one SSLV successful flight. That means we have to demonstrate our capability so that it increases our confidence, and at the same time it will also increase the interest among the, it might also create the demand. So therefore we have to need more and more, we need one more flight for SSLV. India will also need one more successful flight of SSLV to be confident about its ability to launch the smaller satellites. This is the next important point he is making. Then he is talking about private sector and as well as government. He is saying that, now he is in fact criticizing the government that Indian government wants, so in order to increase this demand, so now what the Indian government is doing is, it is now shifting that burden, that responsibility responsibility onto that of the private sector. See this point. The Indian government want the private sector to create the demand among the customers and build and launch the satellites. Even in fact, it want them to look for the services to offer the customers in India and as well as abroad. It also want the revenue by providing the launch vehicle services on its own. So now the government is looking into this particular launch business and trying to make money from it. And here the author is saying that, so this is the government's view, but on the other side, what the private sector or the companies are looking at is, so the government should be the customer. So the government should not be in this launch vehicle business. In fact, government should be the customer and it should give the contracts to these particular private players of launching the vehicles, and thereby, so it has to provide the support so to these particular private sector players. Then definitely over a period of time, so the demand for the launch vehicle will also be improved. So he is saying that soon the government should come out of this particular launch vehicle business and it has to hand over completely to that of the private sector. And in fact, apart from handing over it, it has to be the first customer. It has to be the customer of this particular private sector players, because so now the government can have that guarantee, right? It will give them some money to these particular private players so that they can increase on their research and as well as development, and they will come up with the more and more things. And now here he is pointing to the United States of America's example, so where he is saying that all these contracts of this launch vehicle will be given to that of the private players, like for example SpaceX and as well as the these other private players will be given the contracts. That is how the private players are getting encouraged. So here in our country also, here if you see the last point, so the roadmap here is for the government to exit the launch vehicle business at some point, leaving the companies with a sufficient demand for launch vehicles. This is similar to the US government award contracts to the SpaceX, Blue Origin, etc. to execute the launches with their payloads. Therefore, the Indian government will have to absorb the cost of transition from supply-driven to demand-driven building of satellites and launch vehicles. But it is not yet educating its own ministries and creating some of the anchor demand for the satellites and as well as launch vehicles. So now the author here is saying that instead of the government looking for the customers for the launch vehicle business, it should itself become a customer to the private players and it should support the private players, so that definitely down the line the demand will be increased for the launch vehicles. This is what the author is making about, and definitely this will be important from the UPSC GS paper 3 space perspective. You can expect a question on this particular article. Yes friends, I hope you have understood. This was the problem statement, in fact, that was made by the ISRO chairperson. So in this context, definitely, so UPSC might pick up this particular article and frame a question on it. So these are some of the important points that you can use them as a reference. So, and today's question is, with respect to today's question, so now it's the time for today's question. Yes, Tushil and Tamal are often seen in the news. They are A. Unmanned aerial vehicles, B. Ballistic missiles, C. Nuclear submarines, D. Stealth frigates. So I hope Tushil and as well as Tamal are in the news, and you are already aware of what Tushil and as well as Tamal are, whether are they unmanned aerial vehicles or they ballistic missiles or nuclear submarines or stealth frigates. So if you know the answer, please do comment friends, and if you like the video, please like it, because that gives me more and more motivation to bring the more these type of videos from the LTX classes. And at the same time, if you want the PDF of this particular class, so in the description we have given our Telegram group link. You can join there and get the PDF of this particular class as well, so that you can use it as a reference for your further studies. Yes, okay friends, I hope you have understood. Let's meet again tomorrow. Until then, happy learning, all the best, bye bye.